The invoice sat on my desk like a coiled snake, waiting to strike. Ashford Estate Events, LLC, $127,000 for venue rental, catering, and services. Payment received in full from Thornfield Property Holdings. My property holdings. For my ex-husband's engagement party. To another woman, I pressed my thumb against the paper, feeling the embossed letterhead, and smiled. Marcus had no idea. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. 3 weeks earlier, I'd been reviewing quarterly reports from my real estate portfolio when Sarah, my property manager, had flagged an unusual booking request. The Ashford Estate, the crown jewel of my commercial properties, had been reserved for a private engagement celebration. The client had paid premium rates without negotiation, desperate for the date. The client was Marcus Thornfield, my ex-husband. Using his new girlfriend's trust fund to book a venue I owned, the universe had delivered me a gift wrapped in irony. I could have blocked the booking. Could have revealed myself as the owner and watched him scramble. Instead, I did something far more interesting. I approved it. Then I added my name to the guest list through a mutual friend, claiming I wanted to show there were no hard feelings. Marcus, ever the performer, had loved that narrative. His magnanimous acceptance of my attendance had been shared across 3 different social media platforms. Even my ex-wife is coming to celebrate our love. That's how you know it's real. Now standing in my downtown office as the October sun painted Seattle's skyline in shades of amber, I reviewed the evening's strategy one final time. Phase 1. Attend the party at my own venue. Phase 2. Let Marcus perform his superiority. Phase 3. Wait for the perfect moment. Phase 4. Strike. My assistant knocked softly before entering. Your car is ready, Ms. Chen, and the package you requested has been delivered to Ashford Estate, marked for the event coordinator. Perfect. I stood, smoothing the midnight blue silk dress I'd chosen specifically for tonight. Not last season, not even this season. Custom made by an emerging designer whose career I'd quietly funded. The kind of dress that people in our circle would recognize cost more than most people's monthly rent, but they'd only recognize it if they knew what to look for. Remind me again, I said, gathering my clutch. Who's working the event tonight? My assistant consulted her tablet. Carlos is managing the venue as lead coordinator. He's been briefed. The catering team is from Luminous Events. They don't know the property owner's identity, standard protocol. Bartending staff from Prestige Service. Security is handled by Hawthorne Group. All companies I either owned or had controlling interests in. All employees who'd been given very specific instructions about tonight. And the special guest. Arrives at 9:30. Everything's arranged. I nodded, picking up a small envelope from my desk. Inside was a single key card. Not to the venue. Marcus already had those. This one opened something else entirely. The drive to Ashford Estate took 40 minutes through Seattle's early evening traffic. I'd purchased the property 5 years ago, 2 years after my divorce from Marcus. It had been a gutted historical building in Queen Anne, overlooking Elliott Bay. I'd spent $3 million renovating it into the city's most exclusive event venue. Marcus had no idea. During our marriage, he'd controlled the finances, or thought he had. He'd given me an allowance, monitored my spending, made jokes about my little hobbies when I mentioned business ideas. After the divorce, he'd walked away with what he thought was the better settlement. The house in Medina, his precious Tesla collection, the yacht. I'd taken what he considered scraps. Some cash, a few insignificant property holdings, business interests he didn't understand. Those scraps were now worth $40 million. The Ashford Estate glowed against the darkening sky, its limestone facade illuminated by carefully positioned lights. Valets in crisp uniforms moved efficiently through the circular drive. Guests in evening wear clustered near the entrance, their laughter carrying on the cool breeze. I sat in my car for a moment, watching. This building represented everything Marcus had dismissed about me. Vision, strategy, patience, the ability to transform potential into profit. Tonight, he'd learn that the woman he'd underestimated owned the very ground he stood on. Ms. Chen? My driver glanced in the rearview mirror. Are you ready? I checked my reflection one final time. Hair swept into an elegant low bun. Minimal jewelry, just my grandmother's jade earrings and a slim platinum watch. Makeup understated but perfect. I looked successful but not ostentatious. Wealthy but not desperate to prove it. Exactly the impression I wanted. Let's go. The valet opened my door and I stepped onto the stone driveway. Several heads turned. I saw recognition flicker across faces. Marcus's college roommate, his sister, a few mutual friends from our marriage. Their expressions ranged from surprise to uncomfortable to curious. No. One expected me to look this good. I'd spent the 2 years after our divorce in what Marcus had apparently described to everyone as a spiral. I'd stopped attending social events, deleted my social media, declined invitations. Let people assume I was hiding, licking my wounds, struggling. In reality, I'd been building an empire. Natalie? Marcus's sister Jennifer approached, her expression uncertain. Wow, I didn't think you'd actually come. Why wouldn't I? I smiled warmly. Marcus and Vanessa seem very happy. Jennifer's eyes swept over my dress, my posture, trying to reconcile the woman before her with whatever narrative Marcus had been selling. You look different. Good. Really good. Thank you. You look lovely, too. I gestured toward the entrance. This venue is stunning. Have you been inside yet? Just briefly. It's incredible. Vanessa's father paid a fortune to book it. Apparently there's usually a 2-year waiting list. How wonderful that they could accommodate. I kept my expression neutral, hiding the fact that I'd personally cleared the schedule. Shall we go in? The interior of Ashford Estate took my breath away, even though I'd overseen every detail of its design. The grand ballroom featured soaring ceilings with original crown molding, crystal chandeliers I'd had custom-made in Venice, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the bay. Round tables draped in ivory silk surrounded a central dance floor. A string quartet played near the terrace doors. I'd poured my heart into this space, creating something that honored the building's history while making it functional for modern luxury events. Walking through it as a guest rather than an owner gave me a strange sense of detachment. Natalie Chen, as I live and breathe. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I turned to find Marcus's best friend, David, approaching with 2 champagne flutes. He offered me one, his expression carefully neutral. David, good to see you. I'll admit I'm surprised you came. He sipped his champagne, studying me. Marcus said you probably wouldn't, did he? I accepted the glass but didn't drink. What else did Marcus say? David had the grace to look uncomfortable. Nothing. Just that you 2 had moved on. We have. I smiled. I'm genuinely happy for him. The lie tasted sweet. More guests filtered into the ballroom. I recognized several of Marcus's colleagues from Thornfield Investments, the wealth management firm his father had founded. Marcus had always introduced himself as a financial expert, though his primary qualification was nepotism. During our marriage, I'd made the mistake of suggesting I might pursue an MBA or start a business. Marcus had laughed. Why would you need that? I handle our finances. You focus on making our home beautiful. I'd been 26 then, fresh from a marketing degree, full of ideas. He'd systematically dismissed each one until I'd stopped sharing them. The divorce had been his idea. He'd met Vanessa at a charity gala. Young, blonde, recently inherited wealth from her tech mogul father. Everything I apparently wasn't. He'd asked for the divorce over breakfast. Casual as ordering coffee. I'd said yes before he finished his sentence. His lawyer had been shocked at how reasonable I was during settlement negotiations. I'd taken the terms Marcus offered without fight. He'd walked away thinking he'd won. He had no idea I'd already been moving money, creating LLCs, establishing my own portfolio. The insignificant properties I'd taken? I'd been acquiring them secretly for 2 years. using money from an inheritance my grandmother left me, an inheritance Marcus never knew existed because he'd never bothered to ask about my family, ladies and gentlemen. Voice echoed through the ballroom's sound system. If you could please take your seats, we'll begin the celebration. I found my assigned table near the back. Perfect positioning to observe without being noticed. The other seats filled quickly. People I vaguely recognized from Marcus's social circle. They introduced themselves politely, asking the standard questions about how I knew the couple. I'm Marcus's ex-wife, I said simply. The table went silent. That's... A woman in a red dress searched for words. Progressive of you. To attend. We're all adults. I unfolded my napkin. No reason to let the past interfere with celebration. They seemed uncertain whether to admire or pity me. The lights dimmed slightly as Marcus and Vanessa made their entrance. She wore a white cocktail dress, inappropriate for an engagement party, but I suspected that was intentional. Practice for the wedding? Marcus wore a tailored tuxedo that probably cost $5,000. Purchased, I noted with satisfaction, with money he'd used to pay rent on a venue I owned. They moved through the room, greeting guests, accepting congratulations. Vanessa's laugh was high and practiced. Marcus's smile was the same one he'd worn when we married. Confident. Entitled, certain of his place in the world. I watched from my table, invisible in my corner. Thank you all for coming, Marcus said when they reached the small stage near the windows. Vanessa and I are overwhelmed by your support and love. Applause rippled through the room. I know some of you might find it unusual that my ex-wife is here tonight. Marcus's eyes found me across the ballroom. But I think it speaks to the kind of amicable, mature separation we achieved. Natalie, thank you for coming. More applause. All eyes turned to me. I raised my champagne glass slightly. My smile gracious. You see, Marcus continued, his tone shifting to something that made my jaw tighten. I think it's important to support people even when they're going through difficult times. The divorce was hard on Natalie. She struggled. But tonight shows she's trying to move forward, and I respect that. The room had gone very quiet. It can't be easy, he continued, warming to his narrative, attending your ex-husband's engagement party alone. Seeing him happy. But I think it shows character, and I hope that wherever Natalie is in her journey, she finds peace. He raised his own glass. To new beginnings. To new beginnings, the room echoed. I sat frozen, my champagne untouched, processing what had just happened. Marcus had just publicly positioned me as the tragic figure, the struggling ex-wife who needed his compassion, the woman who'd failed to move on while he'd flourished. Around me, people were glancing over with expressions of pity. This wasn't just narcissism. This was calculated character assassination wrapped in false magnanimity. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Phase 3 initiated. Security has confirmed. Package is in position. I stood smoothly, leaving my champagne on the table. Excuse me, I murmured to my table mates. I need some air. I walked calmly toward the terrace doors, feeling eyes follow me. Let them think I was overwhelmed. Let them believe Marcus's narrative. Outside, the October night was crisp and clear. Seattle's lights sparkled across the water. I moved to the stone balustrade, away from other guests seeking air, and pulled out my phone. A new email waited in my inbox. Subject line, final confirmation. I opened it. The document inside made me smile. Behind me, the terrace doors opened. Heels clicked against stone. I thought I'd find you out here. I turned to find Jennifer, Marcus's sister, approaching with concern etched across her features. I'm fine, I said. Just needed a moment. That was harsh. Jennifer leaned against the balustrade beside me. What Marcus said. About you struggling, was it? I kept my tone neutral. You don't seem like you're struggling. Jennifer gestured toward me. That dress alone probably cost more than my car payment. I said nothing. Look, Jennifer continued, lowering her voice. I don't know what happened between you and Marcus, but I've known my brother my whole life. He has a way of rewriting history, making himself the hero. Why are you telling me this? Because I liked you. During your marriage, you were kind, genuine. Then suddenly you were gone, and Marcus was painting you as this unstable person who couldn't handle success. Jennifer paused. I never believed it. I studied Marcus's sister in the moonlight. She'd always been the outlier in the Thornfield family, less concerned with appearances, more interested in substance. What do you think happened? I asked. I think my brother underestimated you. Jennifer smiled slightly. And I think tonight might get very interesting. Before I could respond, raised voices carried from inside the ballroom. Not angry, excited, confused. Jennifer and I exchanged glances before heading back inside. The ballroom had erupted into chaos. Guests clustered around the windows overlooking the parking area. Phones were out, people pointing, talking over each other. What's happening? Jennifer asked someone nearby. There's been some kind of mistake with the venue booking. The event coordinator is talking to Marcus now. Something about payment. My heart rate increased slightly. Phase 3. I moved through the crowd, positioning myself where I could see the entrance hall. Through the doorway, I spotted Marcus in heated discussion with Carlos, my venue manager. Vanessa stood beside him, her face flushed. This is unacceptable, Marcus was saying, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. We paid in full. You confirmed everything. Sir, I understand your frustration. Carlos maintained professional calm. But there's been an issue with the payment authorization. The account it was drawn from has been flagged. Flagged? What does that mean? It means, Carlos said carefully, that the venue's ownership has questions about the source of funds. Vanessa's father pushed forward, his face red. Are you accusing us of something? That money came from my daughter's trust fund. Everything was legitimate. I'm not accusing anyone, sir, but the venue owner has very strict policies about payment verification. And in this case, there's been the venue owner? Marcus interrupted. I want to speak to them. Right now. That can be arranged, Carlos said calmly. In fact, the owner is here tonight. The crowd had gone completely silent. Everyone within earshot was listening now, the celebration forgotten in favor of this unexpected drama. Here? Marcus looked around wildly. Why would the venue owner be at my engagement party? You invited her, Carlos said. The pronoun landed like a bomb. Her? Marcus's face was confused. Then realization began to dawn, slowly, like watching someone solve a puzzle they didn't want to complete. His eyes found mine across the room. I smiled. No, he said. That's not possible. I walked forward, my heels clicking against marble I'd chosen, through doorways I'd designed, in a building I'd transformed from ruin to showpiece. Hello, Marcus, I said. I believe you wanted to speak with the owner of Ashford Estate? His mouth opened, closed, opened again. You? The word came out strangled. You can't, this is my property, yes. I turned to Carlos. What seems to be the problem? The payment was processed without issue, Carlos reported, slipping seamlessly into our rehearsed script. However, upon reviewing the event details, I noticed the client, he gestured to Marcus, has been making certain statements about you, Ms. Chen, specifically regarding your financial situation. What statements? That you're broke, that you've struggled since your divorce, that you're here tonight out of desperation rather than choice. The crowd was pressing closer now, phones definitely recording. This was going to be all over social media within minutes. Marcus's face had gone from red to white. Natalie, I didn't mean, it was just what, Marcus? I kept my voice level, almost gentle. Just public humiliation? Just rewriting our history to make yourself look magnanimous? You don't own this place. You can't. After the divorce, you barely had anything. I had exactly what I needed. I pulled out my phone, tapping a few buttons. Carlos, can you please display the property records on the main screen? The ballroom's presentation screen flickered to life. Documents filled the display. Deed records, business licenses, all bearing the name Thornfield Property Holdings, LLC. My name as primary owner. I established this company 3 years ago, I explained to the room at large. It owns 17 commercial properties in Seattle, including this estate. I acquired Ashford when it was condemned, spent $3 million renovating it, and opened it to the public 2 years ago. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "You're lying," Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. "You couldn't have. The money, my grandmother's inheritance. The one you never asked about because you were too busy controlling our finances. The one I invested while you were busy telling me I couldn't understand business." I advanced slowly, watching him shrink back. "During our marriage, you gave me an allowance. Do you remember that, Marcus? $3,000 a month for personal expenses while you spent $15,000 on your car collection." "This is inappropriate," Vanessa's father interjected. "Whatever issues you two have are directly relevant," I interrupted smoothly, "to the fact that your daughter's trust fund just paid me $127,000 to host a party where my ex-husband publicly called me broke." That landed. I watched understanding spread through the room like spilled wine. "Oh, my God," someone whispered. "She owns the venue." He paid his ex-wife to throw his engagement party and then called her poor? Marcus was shaking his head. No, this is some kind of mistake. "You're scamming. I'm scamming?" I laughed, the sound sharp. "Marcus, you booked this venue through Prestige Bookings, correct?" "Yes, but a company I also own. You were so desperate to secure this date that you paid double the normal rate without negotiation. My booking agent's notes indicate you specifically said money was no object because you wanted to show everyone how far you'd come." The screen changed, displaying the booking correspondence. Marcus's emails were there for everyone to read. "I need everyone to see this party. It needs to be perfect. No expense spared." "You wanted to impress people," I continued, "to prove your success. And you chose my venue to do it." "I didn't know it was yours." "Exactly." I stepped closer, close enough that only he could hear my next words. "You underestimated me then. You underestimated me during our marriage. And you underestimated me tonight. How does it feel, Marcus?" His jaw worked soundlessly. I stepped back, addressing the room. "I want to be clear. I approved this booking knowing exactly who the client was. I could have blocked it, but I didn't. Because I wanted Marcus to have his perfect party at his perfect venue. And I wanted him to pay for it." "This is insane," Vanessa said, her voice shrill. "You're insane? Who does something like this?" "Someone who spent 5 years being told she wasn't smart enough, wasn't capable enough, wasn't worthy enough to have her own dreams." I looked at her directly. "Someone who built something real while everyone assumed she was crying in an apartment somewhere. Natalie." Jennifer appeared beside me, her expression complicated. "Did you plan all of this?" "The venue?" "Yes, the business." "Yes, tonight," I paused. "I planned to attend and be gracious. But then your brother decided to publicly humiliate me, so I adjusted my strategy." Marcus found his voice. "You can't throw us out. We paid." "We have a contract. You're absolutely right." I nodded to Carlos. "The party continues as planned." "I honor my contracts, Marcus. Unlike some people, the barb hit its target. However," I continued, "I think it's important that everyone here knows the truth. Not the version you've been selling, but the actual facts. You didn't rescue me from anything. You didn't support me through difficult times. You controlled, dismissed, and ultimately discarded me when someone with a bigger trust fund came along. That's not... It is. But here's the interesting part. I'm grateful, because losing you forced me to find myself, to build something real, to become the person you always insisted I couldn't be." I gestured around the ballroom. "So please enjoy your party. Enjoy the venue I built. Enjoy the food from caterers I funded. Enjoy the music from performers I hired. And every time you look around tonight, remember that the woman you called broke owns everything you see." The silence was absolute. Then, from the back of the room, someone started clapping. It was Jennifer. Others joined slowly, tentatively, until half the room was applauding. Not everyone. Marcus's close friends stood frozen, unsure how to react. But enough people that it was clear the room had turned. Marcus looked like he might be sick. "I think," Vanessa's father said quietly, "we should go." The party, Vanessa started, is over. Her father's voice was final. Get your things, they fled. Not walked, fled. Marcus, Vanessa, her father, and a handful of Marcus's loyal friends all scrambling toward the exit like the building was on fire. The remaining guests watched them go in stunned silence. When the door closed behind them, the ballroom erupted. Everyone talking at once, phones out, people pressing forward to ask me questions. Is it true you own all of this? How long have you been planning this? What else do you own? Can I get a quote for a news story? Carlos appeared at my elbow. Ms. Chen, shall I clear the room? No, I raised my voice slightly. Please, everyone, stay. Enjoy the food and drinks. It's paid for, after all. Would be a shame to waste it. Uncertain laughter. Consider it a celebration, I continued. Not of an engagement, obviously, but of honesty, of truth, of the consequences of underestimating people. The crowd slowly relaxed, the tension breaking. The quartet started playing again. Servers began circulating with champagne. Jennifer found me as I stepped back onto the terrace. That was the most incredible thing I've ever witnessed. She said, Your brother brought it on himself. Oh, I know. Jennifer leaned against the balustrade. I'm not defending him. Wow, you really planned all of this? Not all of it. I planned to build a successful business, to create something meaningful. The rest? I shrugged. Sometimes the universe delivers perfect timing. What happens now? Now? I looked back at the party continuing without its guests of honor. Now I go back to running my businesses. Marcus goes back to his life. And everyone here has a story they'll tell for years. He's going to hate you for this. He already did. He just hid it behind condescension. I turned to her. Can I ask you something? Why did you clap? Jennifer was quiet for a moment. Because my brother has been coasting on other people's work his entire life. Our father's company, Vanessa's money, your invisible labor during your marriage. And watching someone finally call him out. She smiled. That was worth applauding. My phone buzzed. Sarah, social media is exploding. Ashford Estate is trending. You're going to have 50 interview requests by morning, I typed back. Decline them all. Focus on business. You're not going to capitalize on this? Jennifer asked, reading over my shoulder. I don't need to. The business speaks for itself. I pocketed my phone. Besides, the best revenge isn't public humiliation. It's private success. Could have fooled me. Tonight was defense, not offense. Marcus attacked first. I straightened. But now it's done. I proved my point. Time to move forward. Inside, the party had transformed into something entirely different. Without Marcus and Vanessa's oppressive presence, guests had relaxed. People were laughing, dancing, genuinely enjoying themselves. Several approached me throughout the evening. Some apologized for believing Marcus's narrative. Others asked business questions. A few wanted investment advice. One woman pulled me aside near midnight. I'm going through a divorce right now. My husband keeps telling me I'm stupid, that I can't manage money, that I'll fail without him. Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. Thank you for tonight. For showing what's possible. That moment made everything worth it. By 1 a.m., the party finally wound down. Carlos supervised cleanup while I stood in the empty ballroom, taking in the space I'd created. Successful evening? He asked, approaching. Define successful. Well, the client fled in humiliation, his engagement is probably ruined, and you became a social media sensation. So. Yes, I laughed. When you put it that way. For what it's worth, Carlos said seriously. Working for you has been the best job I've ever had. You treat people with respect. You pay well. You actually listen to ideas. Whatever you had to endure in your marriage to get here. I'm sorry you went through it, but grateful for what it created. Thank you, Carlos. After he left, I walked through the empty venue one last time. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages, emails, social media notifications. I ignored them all. In the parking lot, my driver waited patiently. Home, Ms. Chen? Yes, home. The drive back through Seattle's empty streets gave me time to process. In one evening, I'd destroyed Marcus's narrative, revealed my success, and potentially burned every bridge to my former life. Was it worth it? I thought about the woman who'd thanked me, about Jennifer's applause, about the look on Marcus's face when reality crashed through his delusions. Yes, it was worth it. My phone rang. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Hello? You bitch. Marcus's voice was thick with alcohol and rage. You planned this, all of it. You humiliated me. No, Marcus, you humiliated yourself. I just provided the venue. This isn't over. I'll sue. You'll do nothing. Because everything I said tonight was true, and you know it. Any lawsuit would require discovery, and I have 5 years of documentation about how you treated me during our marriage. Do you really want that made public? Silence. Go home, Marcus. Marry Vanessa or don't. Build a life. Just leave me out of it. I hung up. Sarah called minutes later. You okay? I'm fine. Better than fine. The press is calling it the Ashford Estate revelation. Very dramatic. Let them. How's the business looking? 3 new booking requests already. Apparently humiliating your ex-husband is excellent marketing. I laughed despite myself. Seriously though, Nat, you did good tonight. Not just the revenge part, though that was spectacular, but standing up for yourself. Telling your truth? It needed to be said. Yeah, it did. After we hung up, I stared out the window at Seattle's sleeping cityscape. Somewhere out there, Marcus was probably still raging. Vanessa was probably reconsidering her engagement. Jennifer was probably laughing, and I was driving home to my penthouse, to my successful businesses, to the life I'd built from nothing. Tomorrow would bring consequences. Press inquiries. Social fallout. Possibly legal threats, but tonight? Tonight I'd owned my truth, and that was enough. The car pulled up to my building. The doorman greeted me warmly. The elevator rose smoothly to my floor. My apartment was exactly as I'd left it. Clean, minimal, mine. I kicked off my heels, poured a glass of water, and stood at my floor-to-ceiling windows. The invoice was still on my desk where I'd left it. $127,000 from Marcus Thornfield for venue rental. I picked it up, studying it one last time. Then I filed it away. After all, business was business. And revenge? Revenge was just a bonus. The morning after arrived with unwelcome intensity. My phone started ringing at 6 a.m., pulling me from restless sleep filled with fragmented dreams of crystal chandeliers and Marcus's stunned face. I ignored the first 3 calls. The 4th was from my lawyer. Richard, I answered, my voice rough. It's Saturday. Have you seen the internet? Richard Cho had been my attorney since the divorce, one of the few people who knew the full scope of my business dealings. Because the internet has definitely seen you. I pulled up social media on my tablet. The first video I found had been viewed 2.3 million times. Someone had recorded the entire confrontation, from Marcus's speech about my supposed struggles to my revelation about owning the venue. The comments section was a war zone. This is the most savage thing I've ever witnessed. She owns the venue? I'm deceased. He paid his ex-wife $127K to throw a party where he called her broke. The irony is chef's kiss. This is either fake or the greatest revenge story of all time. Natalie Chen is my new hero. Mixed in with the praise were darker comments. People calling me vindictive, manipulative, accusing me of being just as bad as Marcus. Some suggested the whole thing was staged for attention. Richard, what's the legal exposure here? Minimal. Everything you said was factually accurate. You own the property, he paid for the booking, and his statements about your financial situation were demonstrably false. If anything, he could be liable for defamation, not you. He won't sue, I know. But his lawyers are already calling. They want a meeting. I sat up, suddenly alert. About what? They're claiming emotional distress, damage to his professional reputation, and breach of contract. The contract claim is particularly creative. They're arguing that you violated the implicit agreement to maintain confidentiality about client identities. That's absurd. There's no confidentiality clause in venue rental agreements. I know. It's a reach. but they're testing to see if you'll settle to avoid prolonged litigation. I walked to my window, looking out at Elliott Bay. A ferry moved slowly across the gray water, carrying people to their ordinary Saturday plans. My day would be considerably less ordinary. Tell them no. I won't settle. If Marcus wants to go to court, we'll go to court. That's what I hoped you'd say. I'll draft a response. Richard paused. Natalie, this is going to get messier before it gets better. Are you prepared for that? I survived a marriage to Marcus Thornfield. I can survive the aftermath. After we hung up, I made coffee and settled in to assess the damage. Or rather, the impact. Damage implied something negative, and I wasn't convinced that's what this was. My business email had 63 new messages. 27 were interview requests from media outlets ranging from local news to national talk shows. 15 were from potential clients wanting to book Ashford Estate. 8 were hate mail telling me I was everything from a vindictive harpy to a gold-digging liar. The rest were business inquiries about my other properties. Sarah had already triaged everything, declining media requests and forwarding legitimate business opportunities to appropriate managers. Her text arrived as I was reviewing. Coffee? I'm guessing you're not sleeping. We met at a quiet cafe in Ballard, far from downtown where people were more likely to recognize me. Sarah arrived with her laptop and 3 manila folders. The good news, she said, sliding into the booth across from me, is that this is incredible publicity. We've had more booking inquiries in 12 hours than we typically get in a month. And the bad news? Marcus's father is involved now. I set down my coffee cup carefully. Robert Thornfield was old money, old power, and old grudges. He'd never liked me during my marriage to Marcus, viewing me as beneath the family's social standing. How involved? Sarah opened the first folder. He's called 3 members of your board of directors, implying that last night's stunt demonstrates poor judgment and instability. He's positioning it as a concern about fiduciary responsibility. I have 3 board members, for my private company, that I own. I know. He's also reached out to 2 of your major commercial tenants, suggesting they might want to reconsider their lease agreements given your erratic behavior. My jaw tightened. That's tortious interference. It is. And Richard is documenting everything. But Robert Thornfield has influence, Natalie. He sits on boards, chairs committees, knows everyone worth knowing in Seattle's business community. So he's trying to destroy my business because I embarrassed his son. Essentially, yes. I thought about Robert Thornfield, the way he'd looked through me at family dinners, how he'd once suggested to Marcus that I sign a postnuptial agreement just to be safe. During the divorce, he'd tried to pressure me into accepting less, warning that fighting the Thornfield family was unwise. I'd taken the settlement Marcus offered and walked away. Robert had probably thought he'd won. What about the 3rd folder? I asked. Sarah hesitated before opening it. Inside were printed screenshots of social media posts, all from the same account, Vanessa Whitmore's Instagram. The posts had started at 4 a.m., a series of increasingly unhinged stories about betrayal, manipulation, and scheming ex-wives. She'd stopped short of naming me directly, but the implications were clear. She's having a breakdown, Sarah observed, or performing one. I studied the screenshots. These are too calculated. Look at the timing. She posted every 30 minutes through the early morning. She wants sympathy, wants to control the narrative. It's working. Her followers are eating it up. There's already a hashtag, #RTeamVanessa. I pulled out my phone and searched the hashtag. Thousands of posts defending Vanessa, painting her as the victim of a jealous ex-wife's vindictive scheme. Someone had created side-by-side photos of Vanessa and me, labeling her class, and me trash. Let them, I said, putting the phone away. Social media outrage has a 48-hour lifespan. By Monday, everyone will have moved on to the next controversy. You're not concerned? About strangers on the internet who don't know me? No, I met Sarah's eyes. I'm concerned about Robert Thornfield and what he might do to my actual business. That's real. The rest is noise. We spent the next hour strategizing, Sarah would reach out to our commercial tenants personally, reassuring them and offering incentives for lease renewals. I would call each board member individually to address any concerns. Richard would prepare cease and desist letters if Robert's interference continued. "There's one more thing," Sarah said as we were leaving. "Jennifer Thornfield called the office this morning. She wants to meet with you, Marcus's sister." "Why?" She wouldn't say, but she sounded urgent. Jennifer had suggested meeting at Cary Park, neutral ground with a spectacular view of the city. I found her sitting on a bench, staring at the Seattle skyline with an intensity that suggested she wasn't really seeing it. "Thank you for coming," she said when I sat down beside her. "You said it was important." "It is." Jennifer turned to face me. "My father is planning something. Something beyond just business pressure?" My stomach tightened. "What kind of something?" "He's been making calls to people at the city planning department, the licensing board, fire marshal's office. He's looking for violations, any excuse to create problems for your properties." "That's illegal?" "Yes. Will anyone call him on it?" "Probably not. He's Robert Thornfield. He's untouchable." Jennifer's voice was bitter. "I love my father, but I'm not blind to what he is. When someone challenges the family, he destroys them. Why are you telling me this?" "Because what you did last night was brave, and because my brother deserved it." She pulled out her phone, showing me a screenshot of a text conversation. "This is from Marcus, sent to our family group chat at 2 a.m. I read the messages. Marcus ranting about me, calling me every name imaginable, saying he'd make me regret humiliating him. But it was Robert's response that chilled me. "Don't worry, son. I'll handle this. She'll regret ever crossing our family. Jennifer, you could get in serious trouble for showing me this." "I know. But you need to understand what you're up against. My father doesn't just want to hurt your business. He wants to obliterate it, and he has the resources and connections to do it." We sat in silence for a moment, watching clouds drift across the skyline. "There's something else," Jennifer continued. "The engagement is off. Vanessa's father broke it off after last night. He doesn't want his family associated with the scandal. How's Marcus handling that?" "About as well as you'd expect. He's at my parents' house, drinking and raging. Vanessa is playing the victim online, and my father is channeling all his energy into destroying you." Jennifer turned to me. "I'm sorry. This is my family's mess and you're caught in it. I'm not caught in anything. I chose to confront Marcus, but you didn't choose to have my father come after you." She was right. I'd been prepared for Marcus's reaction, even for social media fallout. But Robert Thornfield operating in the shadows, using his influence to systematically dismantle my business, that was a different level of warfare. "What would you do?" I asked Jennifer. "If you were me?" She considered the question carefully. "I'd fight back, but not the way you think. My father expects direct confrontation. He's prepared for legal battles, public statements, traditional business competition. What he's not prepared for is someone who understands how to operate in the shadows better than he does. You're suggesting I play dirty. I'm suggesting you play smart. My father's power comes from his network, his reputation, his untouchability. Find the cracks. Exploit them." After Jennifer left, I sat alone on the bench processing everything. The situation had escalated far beyond a single evening's revenge. Robert Thornfield was declaring war, and he had resources I couldn't match directly. But Jennifer was right. Direct confrontation wasn't the only option. I pulled out my phone and made a call. Peterson Investigations. "This is Natalie Chen. I need a deep background workup. Complete financial history, business dealings, personal connections. I need to know everything. Who's the target?" "Robert Thornfield." There was a pause. "That's going to be expensive. And potentially dangerous. Thornfield has a lot of friends. He also has enemies. Find them. I'm not interested in manufactured dirt, just facts. Things he's done that might not look good under scrutiny. Timeline? 3 days. After arranging payment, I called Richard. "I need you to file something for me." "A public records request. For what?" "Every city contract, permit, and variance granted to Thornfield Development Corporation over the past 10 years. Every business license, every tax assessment, every inspection report. Richard was quiet for a moment. You're going after Robert Thornfield. He came after me first. Natalie, this is different from Marcus. Robert Thornfield has serious power. If you challenge him and lose, then I lose. But I'm not hiding. I'm not letting him quietly destroy what I've built. All right, I'll file the requests on Monday. But be careful. Men like Robert Thornfield don't fight fair. Neither do women like me. The weekend passed in a strange state of suspended tension. Social media continued its cycle of outrage and defense. Vanessa posted tearful videos about betrayal. Marcus's friends came to his defense online, painting me as a calculated manipulator. My supporters countered with their own narratives about standing up to entitled men. I ignored all of it, focusing instead on fortifying my position. Sarah reported that all 3 board members had been reassured. Our commercial tenants had confirmed their commitment to their leases. New booking requests for Ashford Estate continued to pour in. Apparently, there was no such thing as bad publicity. By Sunday evening, I'd compiled a list of everyone Robert Thornfield might pressure and personally reached out to each one. Relationships I'd built over 5 years of quiet, ethical business practice were paying dividends. People trusted me. They didn't trust Robert's whisper campaign. Monday morning brought the first real escalation. The fire marshal's office called to schedule an emergency inspection of Ashford Estate. The licensing board notified me of an anonymous complaint about improper permit usage. The city planning department flagged a potential zoning violation at one of my other properties, all within 2 hours, all obvious retaliation. I documented everything, forwarding copies to Richard while maintaining careful, professional responses to each agency. This was Robert's opening move, death by bureaucracy, but I'd been prepared. Sarah, I called into my office. Execute Plan Cascade. Plan Cascade was something we'd developed months ago, long before the Ashford party. It was a contingency for exactly this kind of coordinated assault, a systematic campaign to demonstrate compliance, transparency, and professionalism. Within hours, we'd voluntarily submitted comprehensive documentation to every city agency. Safety reports, financial audits, permit histories. Everything meticulously organized and beyond reproach. If Robert wanted to bury me in paperwork, he'd find I'd already done the homework. Tuesday brought the investigators' preliminary report on Robert Thornfield. I read it alone in my office. The door locked, my phone silenced. Robert Thornfield was exactly what he appeared to be, a wealthy, connected businessman with a sterling public reputation. But the report also revealed interesting patterns. 3 business partnerships dissolved suddenly over the past decade, all with non-disclosure agreements. 2 former employees who'd filed complaints with the State Labor Board, cases settled quietly. A pattern of aggressive acquisition tactics that skirted the line of legality. City contracts awarded to Thornfield Development under circumstances that looked suspiciously like favoritism. Nothing explicitly illegal, but plenty that wouldn't look good under public scrutiny. The deeper I read, the more I understood Robert's power structure. It wasn't built on talent or innovation. It was built on relationships, favors, and carefully managed reputation, which meant it was vulnerable. My phone buzzed. Marcus calling from yet another new number. Against my better judgment, I answered. What do you want, Marcus? To talk, please. Can we meet? The desperation in his voice surprised me. Why would I do that? Because my father is out of control. Because this has gone too far. Because, he paused. Because, I'm sorry. I almost hung up. Almost. But something in his tone made me curious. 1 meeting. Public place. Tomorrow at 2. Thank you. Natalie, I really am. I hung up before he could finish. What game was he playing now? The coffee shop Marcus chose was deliberately public, a busy downtown location where neither of us could make a scene. I arrived 10 minutes early, positioning myself with a clear view of the entrance and exit. Old habits from years of managing his unpredictable moods. He looked terrible. The expensive suit couldn't hide the weight he'd lost, the shadows under his eyes, the tremor in his hands as he ordered coffee. When he sat across from me, I saw something I'd never seen before in Marcus Thornfield's face. Genuine fear. "Thank you for meeting me," he said quietly. "You have 15 minutes. My father is going to destroy you. Not just your business, you personally. He's already hired investigators to dig into your finances, your past, looking for anything he can use." Marcus leaned forward. "Natalie, I know you think you're prepared, but you're not. My father doesn't lose, ever. Why are you telling me this?" "Because this isn't what I wanted." He ran a hand through his hair. "That night at the party, I was showing off. Being an idiot. I never thought it would lead to this. You called me broke in front of 100 people, Marcus. At a venue I own. What did you think would happen?" I know, and I was wrong. But now my father is involved, and he won't stop until you're completely ruined. He's talking about buying out your tenants' leases, orchestrating a smear campaign, leveraging every contact he has to blacklist you from the business community. I sipped my coffee, watching him squirm. "And you want what? For me to apologize? To back down? I want you to protect yourself. Take a settlement. My father is willing to pay you to quietly sell your properties and leave Seattle. It's a lot of money, Natalie. Enough to start over somewhere else." There it was. The real reason for this meeting. Robert Thornfield wanted me gone, and Marcus was the messenger. How much? $5 million, cash. You sign an NDA, sell your Seattle holdings, and relocate. My father has already identified potential buyers for your properties. Everything handled quietly, professionally. And if I refuse? Marcus's expression darkened. Then he destroys you. Every property gets tied up in litigation. Every business relationship gets poisoned. Every contract gets challenged. He'll make it so expensive and exhausting to operate that you'll have no choice but to sell, but for pennies on the dollar instead of millions. I set down my coffee cup with deliberate care. "Let me make sure I understand. Your father wants to pay me $5 million to leave town because I embarrassed you at a party. It's not about the party anymore. It's about respect. About not letting people challenge the Thornfield family. About control." "Yes," Marcus admitted, "about control. My father built his empire on the principle that nobody crosses him without consequences. You crossed him by extension when you humiliated me." "I didn't humiliate you, Marcus. I told the truth." "You humiliated yourself. Does it matter?" "The result is the same." He leaned back, exhausted. "Look, I'm trying to help you. $5 million is more than fair. Take it. Start fresh somewhere else. Because if you fight him, you'll lose everything." I studied my ex-husband across the table. Once I'd loved this man. Or thought I had. Now I saw him clearly. A weak person who'd always hidden behind his father's power, who'd never built anything real, who couldn't conceive of someone refusing to be bullied. Tell your father no. Natalie, I'm not selling. I'm not leaving. And I'm not afraid of Robert Thornfield. I stood, gathering my bag. Your 15 minutes are up. You're making a mistake. Maybe. But it's my mistake to make. I walked out of the coffee shop into Seattle's gray afternoon, my heart pounding but my resolve solid. Marcus had given me valuable intelligence, probably more than he realized. Robert Thornfield was scared enough to offer $5 million, which meant he knew something I didn't, or feared something I might discover. Back at my office, I called an emergency meeting with Sarah and Richard. They offered $5 million, I told them. To sell everything and leave Seattle. Richard whistled low. That's serious money. It's also admission of vulnerability, Sarah said. They wouldn't pay that much unless they had something to hide. I pulled out the investigator's report. I think I know what. Look at this pattern. 3 former business partners, all forced out suddenly, all with NDAs. What if there's something in those partnerships? Something Robert doesn't want examined? Richard was already on his laptop. Give me those names. While he searched, I reviewed the city records requests we'd filed. Dozens of contracts between Thornfield Development and various city departments. Several involving properties that were later flipped for significant profit. Found something, Richard announced. One of the former partners, Daniel Reeves, filed a complaint with the SEC 3 years ago. It was dismissed, but the filing is public record. He alleged that Robert Thornfield used insider information about upcoming city development plans to acquire properties before public announcement. That's illegal, Sarah said. Yes, but impossible to prove without access to internal communications. The SEC investigation went nowhere because they couldn't establish the information flow. I thought about Robert's connections, his City Hall relationships, the pattern of perfectly timed property acquisitions. What if we could prove it? You'd need documentary evidence, emails, recorded conversations, something concrete showing Robert received non-public information and acted on it. Or, I said slowly, we'd need someone willing to testify who was part of those conversations. Sarah caught on immediately. Daniel Reeves. And probably the other 2 former partners. I pulled up the investigator's report. All 3 signed NDAs, but NDAs don't protect illegal activity. If Robert engaged in insider trading or corruption, their non-disclosure agreements would be void. Richard was already dialing. I know someone who knows Reeves. Let me make some calls. The next 48 hours moved with surgical precision. Richard's contact reached out to Daniel Reeves, who was initially reluctant, but agreed to a confidential meeting. The other 2 former partners were harder to locate. But we found them. What emerged from those conversations was damning. Robert Thornfield hadn't just used inside information. He'd systematically cultivated relationships with city officials, trading campaign contributions and favorable contracts for advance notice of zoning changes, infrastructure projects, and development plans. He'd built his empire not through business acumen, but through a carefully orchestrated system of corruption. And all 3 former partners had documentation. This is enough for a criminal investigation, Richard said, reviewing the evidence. Securities fraud, bribery, corruption of public officials. Will they testify? If they're protected, yes. They're all tired of watching Robert Thornfield operate above the law while they're stuck under NDAs. I sat back in my chair, understanding the full picture now. Robert hadn't offered me $5 million because I'd embarrassed Marcus. He'd offered it because he knew that any serious scrutiny of his business practices would unravel everything. My phone buzzed. Jennifer Thornfield. Are you watching the news? I pulled up a local news site. The headline made my breath catch. Prominent developer Robert Thornfield under investigation for city contract irregularities. Someone had leaked the story. Not me. We'd been planning to present evidence to the FBI first. But someone else had decided to act. Jennifer, was this you? No, but I know who it was. Vanessa's father. He's been quietly investigating my father since the engagement party, trying to figure out what kind of family his daughter almost married into. When he found irregularities in some city contracts, he went straight to the press and the FBI. The irony was almost too perfect. Robert Thornfield's attempt to destroy me had led to his own exposure through a completely different avenue. What's happening now? FBI agents are at my parents' house. My father's lawyer is there. Marcus is having a complete breakdown. And my mother, Jennifer's voice cracked. My mother is finally seeing what my father really is. I'm sorry, Jennifer. Don't be. This needed to happen. My father has been operating like a mob boss for decades. It's time someone held him accountable. Over the next week, the story exploded. Federal investigators uncovered years of systematic corruption. City officials resigned. Contract awards were reviewed. Robert Thornfield's empire began its inevitable collapse. Marcus called me once more, not to threaten or negotiate, but to simply say, "You were right." About everything. I'm sorry for what I became. I accepted his apology, not for him, but for my own closure. The fire marshal's inspection of Ashford Estate found 0 violations. The licensing board dismissed the anonymous complaint as baseless. The city planning department cleared all my properties. Robert Thornfield's influence evaporated overnight. 2 months later, I stood in Ashford Estate's ballroom for a very different kind of party. A celebration for my company's expansion into Portland, with 3 new properties acquired from Thornfield Development's bankruptcy sale. Sarah raised her glass. To justice. To building something real, I countered. Jennifer attended, having distanced herself from her family's disgrace. We'd become unlikely friends, bonded by the wreckage of Thornfield pride. Do you ever regret it? She asked me quietly. That night at the engagement party? I thought about the question honestly. That one evening had triggered a cascade of consequences I never anticipated. Marcus's engagement destroyed. Robert's empire crumbling. A family shattered. But I also thought about the 3 former business partners who could finally speak their truth. The city officials who were held accountable. The systematic corruption that was exposed and dismantled. No, I said finally. I don't regret telling the truth. I only regret that it took so long. My phone buzzed with a notification. Another booking request for Ashford Estate. Another business opportunity. Another day in the life I'd built from nothing. Marcus was right about one thing. Actions had consequences. But he'd been wrong about who would face them. I walked to the ballroom windows, looking out at Seattle's lights reflected in Elliott Bay. Somewhere in this city, Marcus was presumably rebuilding his life. Robert was facing federal charges. Vanessa was moving on to her next relationship, and I was here, standing in a venue I'd created, running businesses I'd built, living a life I'd fought for. The best revenge I'd learned. Wasn't destruction, it was construction, building something so solid, so real, so undeniably successful that no one could ever call you broke again, even at a party you own. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.